Welcome everyone. I have a fun project today that I think you'll enjoy, and I call this the Boyette project. And let me tell you a little bit about what inspired it. In the United States where I live, hobos were people who were homeless. They weren't lazy. They would work. They traveled from place to place and did whatever jobs were available. Um, Really, these people lived in a time of depression and bad economics, and there weren't a lot of opportunities. And maybe they were migrant workers, or um, well, for whatever reason, they just didn't settle down. Often they lived in alleyways, abandoned buildings out in the woods near train tracks or wherever. A lot of times they would gather in little groups or communities and kind of encourage each other. But as I said, they weren't lazy people. They weren't bums. They would work when work was available. But during this period of time when they were hobos, they were considered homeless and vagrants, or moving from place to place, not stationary. And they were usually very poor, meager means, and so their clothes were a lot of times torn and tattered, and they didn't have the best of anything. Well, a male was called a hobo, but when I did a little more research on it, I found out that the females that were doing the same thing were called boettes. And I thought that I love that term. It really it's a term derived from the French language, but I thought, well, the Boyette sounded really pretty, even though it wasn't a pretty situation. So anyway, I was making this journal, and I wanted it to be, it's not bohemian, but I wanted it to be more on the boho or Boyette side. So this is a journal that is inspired by the female Boyettes of that time. And this is my cover so far. Now what I'm going to do to finish it is I made what I call a Boyette patchwork. And that's what I'm going to finish this as my decoration on the front of this journal. Because this, from my own imagination, I imagine these females, they would probably not have more than one or two changes of clothes, and they would probably do a lot of patching to keep those clothes decent and as wearable as possible. So I thought, what can I do to mimic that? Well, I'll tell you what I started with. Let me take this off. I started with just a torn piece of linen, and I sized it to be the approximate size that I needed to make a decoration with. And then in my Etsy shop, I sell pre-cut fabrics that make great snippet rolls and other things. They're just all kinds of fabrics that are cut in squares and little odd shapes, but just ready to do something with. And I thought, well, that'll make a perfect patchwork if I just use those. So that's what I did. And so what I did was I just started taking some of those and laying them on my piece of fabric with no particular pattern in mind, and not grabbing any specific piece, and just putting them down randomly and using them the way they came. As you can see, there's quite a good variety, and if I thought I need a little more coverage or breakup, I just throw one in on the side there. I'd do a whole row of that, then I'd come back up at the top and I'd start another one across. I think there's two pieces there, yes. And again, no particular rhyme or reason, just getting some coverage down. And but making what is appearing to be a patchwork. You want to pretty much cover the underside, but all of the linen, but at the same time you can leave some edges showing, or even in between. The linen itself is pretty, so you can do it that way too. But as you can see, it's forming a patchwork. And so what I did then was I took it to my machine, and I just, roughly zigzag down some straight lines, or fairly straight, to attach these particular pieces here all the way down. You can't really see a lot of the stitching. You can see some more from the back, but I stitched them down, and then I turned it, and I did some just meandering stitch across to catch a little more of the edges. Okay, and then I took some loose strings that I had and scattered them around. And then I thought, okay, this is a female boho. She needs a little bling. So what I did then was I took a little bit of this silver shiny gauzy fabric, and I chopped it up in little tiny pieces and sprinkled it over the top. So I have the strings and the little silver pieces, which you can see sprinkled over the top. I think maybe you can see the shine that they have there. Okay, and then again I just came in and did a little meandering stitches around, and so that I could catch enough of that. Okay, I didn't try to catch everything I had on there. I just did what I thought was sufficient, and then I just turned it over and shook it out really good, and whatever stayed on was what I would go with. Now some of these strings are long. That doesn't bother me, but if it bothers you, you could trim them up. This I love, but if you don't like it, something like that on your piece, trim it off. And when you get through doing that, you'll have a piece that you can put on the front of a journal whenever the mood strikes you to do a Boyette journal with the female boho theme. And so many of our journals with the when we use junk elements and junk mail and used things when in it, well, it already has that Boyette theme going on, and so making something specific or pretty that has a meaning to you will make it even more special. So now this piece will get attached to the front, and that will become my page decoration. I'm going to pull it down a little bit like that because I have a little patchwork going on up here, and let a little bit of this just hang over. Okay, but now that's my take on doing a hobo Boyette theme, and doing it with just scraps of linen, just scraps of fabric. Like I said, mine are pre-cut, and they're available in my Etsy shop, but if you've got a large stash of fabric scraps, we'll just start cutting up you some small squares so that you could put them together. You don't want big ones because that becomes a traditional patchwork look, which is more homestead style. You want little ones so you get a bunch of stuff on there, and then find something that has a little glitz or glitter to it, and put that on there if you want it to go more of a female feel to it, little blingy thing there. And then whatever else that you wanted to add to this would be fine. You could put charms on it, you could add some beading, you could add some florals, whatever, but I like it just like it is because I envisioned that this female hobo would do what she could to make her garments pretty, but she wouldn't have a lot to work with. So there wouldn't be extra stuff. There'd just be necessities. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I love designing, and I love thinking up themes for things that are unusual. Sometimes when you're reading, you just run across something and you think, oh, well, what can I do with that thought? And that's how it kind of worked with the hobo theme. And then it struck me, well, what they call female hobos? And that's why I researched that and looked that up. So this is a Boyette embellishment. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you make some Boyette embellishments of your own. Thank you for being with me, and have a great creative day.